Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fun filled episode of Common Knowledge, a Magic the Gathering podcast about improving in Magic the Gathering's most affordable format, Pauper. I am your host, Kyle Novus, here to guide you through the hallowed halls of Pauper. And joining me today is my fantastic co host, Mason Clark. How are you doing today, Mason?
Fantastic is such high praise. I'm doing great. I would say I have a fantastic day for a fantastic guy. It's just great. And I think you're just a downshifted rare, buddy. You're the best.
Oh, thank you. That really means a lot.
You're welcome.
And in this case, I think I'd rather be a downshifted uncommon, but that's getting a little specific here.
Ah,
So,
too good for the compliment, I see.
apparently. Okay, so before we get started, we would like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Legit MTG. If you are looking for any popper singles or singles for any format, uh, Legit MTG is a really, really good place to go to. They have free shipping on any order over $2. And there's also a lot of user created content of people just like you have submitted articles and things like that. Our podcast is on there. So if you're looking for quality content to help you get started or to just delve a little bit deeper on a topic of your choice, definitely check out Legit MTG.
Yeah, I would say they are a fantastic sponsor. And and one of the cool things about the cards we're going to talk about today is they're all reprints. So a lot of them got reprinted actually from uncommon to common. So they're very cheap. So if you have a popper local metagame in real life, you can go ahead and already pick up those cards if you're missing them. So you can go out to check out Legit MTG. They have a good selection of cards, and they'll get it to you quickly and affordably.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Mason kind of hinted at there, uh, this episode we are going to be discussing the downshifts from Iconic Masters to kind of discuss how these cards are going to impact the metagame and see where they fit, things like that. So in order to kind of introduce the method that we're going to be using here, we are going to be using a grading scale. And as kind of an immediate disclaimer, um, this grading scale, it is very
It's
granular in a
perfect.
way, and it kind of fits things into a tiny box that isn't necessarily going to be the case in terms of synergies that are unseen and things like that. We might not be able to account for those in the immediate moment. But this is our best attempt to try and give you an idea of how good these cards are going to be. Um, A is definitely playable. Something that's absolutely going to impact the format, at least in our opinion. B is likely playable. C is something that's situational, like a sideboard potential. D, unlikely to see play, and an F is just clearly unplayable. It's objectively worse than something else. You would have to be a lunatic to be playing this. Uh, and in order to kind of give you the criteria that we're using and kind of what we're going to be discussing, uh, we are going to be looking at how strong is the card in a vacuum, um, if the card fits into an existing deck, or if it makes a new deck possible. We are also going to be taking a look at if there are cards that could just do a better job in particular situations. And then we're going to also discuss if there are any factors limiting its potential. We might hit one, two, or all of these for a card, but sometimes we might skip over some of these if they seem a little bit obvious or if they just do not come up in conversation.
Yeah.
So, are you ready to get started, Mason?
I was born ready to get started.
Fantastic.
No, I'm not actually ready to start. I was born ready to start. I never actually started. So that was a good way to vamp to get the list pulled up. So you can start now.
Okay. Fantastic. I'm going to keep using that word now.
Fantastic.
So the first card on our list is Scion of Ugin. Scion of Ugin is a 6-mana colorless dragon spirit. It is a 4/4 with flying. Now, what do you think about this card, Mason?
So 6 mana, 4/4 flying, colorless. Not fantastic. Not exactly what I'm looking for in the format. It so it can go into any strategy, which is like appealing with colorless cards, something you have to look at. But WotC has been pretty good in the last 5 or 10 years about making sure that colorless cards are balanced correctly for the most part, especially at common when it comes to draft. So I don't think this is a card we're really gonna see. I mean, you can get much more powerful cards at 6 mana, just crazy more powerful ones, and you can get this card at like, we're gonna talk about a card later that's very comparable to this card at 4 mana in red. So I don't think this is a card I'm excited for. I give it
Yeah.
a F for fantastically never being played.
Yeah, I kind of I mean, I definitely agree. Like, it is not a good card by any stretch of the imagination. Its biggest benefit is really that it can just slot in anywhere. It is colorless after all. So, like, if you are really struggling to find a 4/4 flyer for some reason, you specifically want a 4/4 flyer, then this might be the direction that you go in. Or if you're trying to make colorless Tron work, then you
Yeah,
might
that's what to
give
say
this
that.
card a shot. But it's not something that is particularly flashy. Uh, I think the other part of it that is kind of important is that it is both a dragon and a spirit. And some of the cards that we're going to talk about later do specifically ask for dragon cards. And there aren't a whole lot of dragons available in the format. So if somebody's really trying to make a dragon deck work, then this might be where they find themselves. Um, but even then, I don't see that really being plausible.
Yeah, the thing that makes the most sense to me is colorless Eldra. I'm sorry, colorless Tron, because you
Mhm.
can't play this thing on turn 3, and it is pretty big, and like it's gonna live through bolts and stuff like that. So that's nice, but it's still just a lot of work. I mean, you can be playing Ulamog Crusher like the next turn, which
Yeah,
is
I'm.
much better.
I think we can definitely agree that this thing gets a solid F.
Yep. You know what's not gonna get a solid F?
What?
Not this next card. It's probably getting an F. It's called Angel's Mercy. It's 2 white, instant. You gain 7 life. End. It has some
It's
flavor
actually
text. Huh?
Angel of Mercy.
Oh, I have the wrong card. All right. Well,
Yeah, you have the wrong card, sir. Do you
huh.
want?
Do you want me to like vamp for a second while I pull up the right card and then be like,
No,
hmm?
I can grab this one.
It's 4 white for a creature angel flying. When Angel of Mercy comes into play, you gain 3 life. It's a 3/3. So, I had the wrong card pulled up. But was I really that far off when it comes to the likelihood this card seeing play? I'm
I
not
mean,
exactly sure. What do you think, Kyle?
I mean, like between the life gain, you were definitely right on. Card does come with a body at least.
This true.
Um, if you're able to if you're able to play something that's going to be flickering this, it might be worth it. But at 5 mana, like that life gain at that point in the game, 3 life typically isn't going to really save you too much. Um, it's not a huge tempo swing for you by any stretch of the imagination, especially with it not being very efficient at all. The 3/3 for 5 mana is not good. Um,
Mm. Yeah,
yeah, I don't like this card. I
I mean,
don't think it's.
like I was joking with you before the cast, but like we're living in a world of like Ponder, Preordained, Brainstorm, Gush, and
Mhm.
like you need to like compete with those decks. And not to say that every deck plays that and every deck can't compete, but like that, like even though it's Pauper, you still have powerful cards in it, and these cards that don't really impact in a meaningful way, just make it kind of hard. Now there are some life gain cards I think we'll talk about later that have a chance of doing something, but I mean, this gets an F for flying off into the distance and never seeing the light of day, in my opinion.
Yeah, I
Oh, think we might have lost Kyle there for a second. I think what Kyle was going to say is that, yeah, for the body that it is, it's just not reasonable to expect this thing to actually win the game. It's not a very powerful card. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to head to a break real quick while we try and get Kyle back. So we'll be right back. 2. We're back. We're never gone.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Never comes.
Yeah.
Didn't happen.
You know what will be gone?
What?
Angel of Mercy from our conversation. Let's move on to the next one.
Exactly. I'm a fan of that choice. Okay, so the next card we are going to be discussing is Seeker of the Way. And now this card has quite a bit of buzz around it. Seeker of the Way is 1 and a white. It is a 2/2 prowess creature with whenever you cast a non-creature spell, lifelink until end of turn.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mason and I kind of discussed this card a little bit before the show started, and um, I'm not very high on it specifically because I do not see where this card is going to fit,
Mm-hmm.
unless with some of our later cards that we're going to discuss that also have prowess, things like that. If it fits into a strategy there somehow that I'm not seeing, but I have to say I'm just not particularly impressed with it. I mean, it's a good card, like 2/2 prowess, and it gains lifelink whenever that prowess is activated. That's fantastic, but it's I don't know. I just don't see it fitting anywhere or any deck really wanting this card right now. And I could be completely wrong. So Mason, tell me, am I wrong?
Well, I don't think it fits into like a solid deck right now, at least as a strict replacement of something else. But I think you kind of touched on what makes the card potentially good. So first, there aren't a whole lot of prowess cards at common right now. Prowess became an evergreen mechanic about a year and a half ago. So we have some, but not a whole lot of white just because white doesn't get them at all. Typically in the color pie now, it's blue-red is its primary colors, and it's tertiary and white, which means sometimes not a whole lot. So that is access to something you just don't get a whole lot. Plus, in a spells deck that involves white, having lifelink is very powerful. Imagine you're playing against a red deck or an elf deck, and you're just getting to attack for 3, gain some life, and just stay alive. Or like maybe green stompy, right? Like you you cast something along those lines, right? Get a little bit of lifelink, attack in, gain some more life, right? And then start stabilizing the board. And it's just something that gives you access to. It's also just in the sideboard of maybe some white X control deck. You can bring it in as a way to kind of juke them in the control mirror and have a threat while also doubling as a hate card for aggressive decks. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm not sold that it's like this is gonna make inside out combo the nut, but I'm like, it's like just a reasonable card that's good and it will probably see play at some point. So I think it's worth like noting for that reason.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth noting that this card exists now.
Mhm.
I'm sure that we are going to see people attempting to use this at some point in the future. I mean, especially on like Reddit. Uh,
Mhm.
a lot of people are discussing this card in particular and saying that this is probably the most playable out of this list.
That's wrong.
Um,
Hashtag hot
yeah,
take.
so
Come at me, Reddit.
uh, I definitely agree that this is probably something that I'm at least going to see in sideboards.
Mhm.
Um, and I think you make a really good point that it is an aggressive option for stabilizing. So I could see if you are in like a mid-rangey to control strategy of sorts that is playing white, using this card as well. I think that's
Yeah.
it's a good enough reason to use it. That lifelink can be powerful.
Yeah, so here's the thing that everyone wants to know for their sweet spreadsheets for the common knowledge cheat list. What is the grade?
I'm giving it a C. I think it's situational. I think it's sideboard potential only at this point.
Mm.
But if somebody can find a solid place that it slots into, then maybe it could go up into like B category.
Yeah, I think it's like a C plus right now. But if we
Yeah.
get more prowess in white and we can build something along those lines, like a blue white or blue red prowess deck, then it could see more play. And I do think it does serve a reasonable role in the sideboard. I don't play a whole lot of those decks, but I think it is just a reasonable card to play there. So C plus, boom. Do you know what is probably not a C plus?
What is that?
Survival cash. So you gain 2. I'm sorry, 2 and a white sorcery. You gain 2 life. Then if you have more life than your opponent, draw a card. Rebound. So that's the interesting thing about this card. It's a rebound, if you don't know what it means, is when you cast a spell, you exile it as it resolves. Then at the beginning of your upkeep, you may cast the card again without paying its mana cost. So, in theory, if you're in like a deck that has a lot of life, this is a draw 2, right? And it also gains you a little bit of life to work towards that. So, Kyle, what's your opinion on this card?
I really like this card actually.
Yeah.
I think just the life gain alone like isn't fantastic. Like 4 life over 2 turns for 3 mana, not a great card. You aren't going to be playing that.
Ever.
But if you're in white and you're looking to gain card advantage, it's hard, especially if you aren't splashing blue on some level. So like white weenies, stuff like that. Um, or decks that are just white and taking advantage of a color that isn't blue. Uh, Having access to some kind of spell that can draw them cards is really, really good because if you look at this card, it's basically like divination with life gain tacked on.
A little bit, yeah. I think I'd be more high on this card if a Johnny Pridemate had turned out to actually be common and not uncommon. Then I could think, like we kind of talked about before the show, how the Soul Sisters deck could get a really big boost. Unfortunately, though, I think outside of Soul Sisters, this card just isn't playable. And in Soul Sisters, I'm not sure if they're looking for this kind of card. The problem is that it is very situational. Even though it does work towards fixing the situation, you have to be ahead in life. If it was like tied or more, at least it'd be a little bit more reasonable. But ahead is pretty unreasonable, and games when you're falling behind it's a point of the quadrant theory that I'm sure we did an episode at one point that's really important to me when I'm looking at a card is when I'm behind, how does the card work? And when you're behind, this card is like the worst card you could ever draw. And when you're ahead, it's still not even that good. It's just like a redraw, and it requires a lot of work to stay ahead with this card. So I'm curious to hear where you put this card in your rating scale, but I think it's cool in some decks, but I don't know. It's like a D to me. Like it has its niche spot, and that's it. Is that where you put D's niches?
I think what's kind of interesting is its interaction with the card that we were just talking about, Secret of the Way.
That is true.
I think that um, if somebody were to be building a deck around Secret of the Way, that this card would probably end up in there somewhere.
The main problem with this card is that like you play Seeker on 2, and you play this, and you don't get to attack with Seeker first to get the trigger. So you're like, play Seeker, play like another Seeker 1-drop card we'll talk about later, gain 3 next turn, play this, gain 6.
Oh yeah, this is more of a I could see it as like a late game, maybe 1 of or 2 of in your deck, just as like when you are starting to fizzle out on not having draws, this kind of helps you a little bit. But you do have to have that kind of life total advantage already. So I would say probably C minus is where I would put this.
I'm like, I've gone lower since we started talking about it, like D minus. like as you're talking about it, you're like telling me all these reasons why I don't want it, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. For all the different reasons. But I mean, I think that's one of the cool things. Like, that's some of the things that's really appealing about Pauper is that, like, pros don't really play it, and there's no real reason to incentivize breaking it, because, like, the Moto Leagues aren't really worth it. So it's definitely a format that's more open to experimentation than any other format, except maybe Commander. But even Commander is sometimes played really competitively, so I think that is one of its biggest draws.
Yeah. So, Mason, you know which card pros are definitely not breaking anytime soon?
Angel's Mercy from earlier.
Well, that and Sustainer of the Realm. So
Tyrion.
Sustainer of the Realm is 2 and double white. It's an angel, so if you're really looking for angels, this is where you're gonna look. It is flying. It's a 2/3.
Yep.
Whenever Sustainer of the Realm blocks, it gets +0/+2 until end of turn. So I just want to go ahead and say, like, this card, like, solid F. Like, it's not good. Something that is a 2/5 sometimes with flying for 4 mana, but can still just be bolted whenever, like, that's not good.
Yeah, I really want to watch the I'm sorry, not the Halt and Catch Fire later, So I'm gonna say it's an F2, and let's move on. There's nothing to talk. Like these kind of cards just aren't play. Like at least Silence colorless, and so like, and it doesn't die to Bolt, so we can maybe talk about it. But this one's like, man, you know what? I'm just gonna dissolve this card on the review and move to the next one. Countered, dissolve, 1 blue 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 instant, counter target spell, scry 1. So it's slightly better cancel. The scry 1 is like makes it better than cancel, which is nice, but you weren't really playing cancel anyways. Some people have talked about playing this over deprive in the blue black control decks. I could see that having the 2 mana answer is really relevant in the mirror, but lots of the times you are looking for like specific cards, so the scry is nice. I like this card. Kyle, this is a card I don't think you play with a lot, right? Like you're not a big counterspell kind of guy.
I have in the past. In Modern, I played a lot of control decks for a while.
Mistakes.
I like control decks when I can play them. I just don't like how they tend to function in Pauper, and I can see Dissolve as a one of, like maybe, but just counter target spell, scry 1. That's not really doing much for me. I mean, if it was counterspell with like the option of pay 1 extra to scry 1, that would be fantastic. It would be great. But
yeah, that would be like better counterspell.
Exactly, but this is just I don't know.
I mean, the format does have counterspell in it, so that's worth mentioning. I just do want to say that like Dissolve kind of overperformed when it was in Standard. Like a lot of people thought like what we're saying right now, and that Standard format was very powerful. So.
Okay.
Like both of them were. So it's worth mentioning. I'm curious what your rating on the card's going to be.
I'm putting it at a D. I don't like the card. I think that it's pretty bad. We have access to a lot of counter spells in this format. If you just go and on Gatherer and search for counter spells, you're going to find a ton of them. And I think we have a lot better options.
What if I float mana and I gush dissolve them? That's just like scry 5. That's like draw 3. Because I'm obviously going to scry a bad one. I think it's like a C. Like it's just a fine card. Maybe a C minus. Like it's probably going to C play. That's why I'm giving it a C. But it's going to be like a 1 of. Always. And maybe a 2 of when people get greedy. Like if it actually turns out to be good and the format slows down. So I'm going to go the C route.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I'm still giving it a D. I just don't like the card.
That's fine. You have every right to be wrong. Half of America does it every day. All right, continue.
Okay, so now we get to talk about a card that I actually really, really like. And that is Jace's Phantasm. So Jace's Phantasm is a 1/1 creature with flying for a blue, and Jace's Phantasm gets +4/+4 as long as an opponent has 10 or more cards in his or her graveyard. I love this card just because there are so many mill options that we have in Pauper, and we have a lot of cards that just have like milling effects tacked onto them. That getting 10 cards into your opponent's graveyard is really not too tall of an order. It's not something that you're going to just be doing on accident most of the time, but
it's something
that's doable.
Is Thoughtscour legal?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I thought so. I wasn't sure. All right.
So this is basically, and I look at it, it's going to tend along, if you are playing this card, you are playing it in a strategy where it is going to be a 5/5 flyer for one. And graveyard removal, like Relic of Progenitus, does go around that a little bit, and it's going to make things problematic. It's kind of a limiting factor for it, but I still see this as being a good card. What do you think about this, Mason? Do you think that this is viable?
Oh man, it's hard. It's really hard because like this plus another card on the list really pushes you towards a blue-black mill deck that's like kind of aggressive. The problem is that like it's good that we have Thought Scour so that we can like mill them and not be down on cards, but mill just has such an inherent problem that like you're technically doing like a third of the damage, right? So you need to get them from 60 to 0 instead of 20 to 0. So when a card says like mill 6, it's like shock them, which is fine but not playable really. And these guys give you an alternative win condition in the sense that they're like, well, all you have to do is mill them a little bit, and then we give you this big reward. And so I need to know how many creatures there are like this, and
Hmm.
like how much of this is doable. My fear is that it's a little bit too situational, and the cards don't line up well enough with the format. I
Hmm.
could be wrong, but I think this card has the stipulation grade of if the mill deck happens, it's like an A, right? If there isn't a mill deck that's good, this card's like an F. Like
I
I don't think there's like a big in between.
I really don't see this as just going in like a dedicated mill deck. I don't see this as like the auxiliary strategy. I see this as the strategy for the deck that is going to be wanting to play this.
Yeah.
Um,
So we need like a
and
milling aggressive deck.
yeah, I'm seeing it more in like a milling aggressive deck. Uh, and even then, I think my biggest concern with this is not necessarily the ability to create a milling aggressive deck
Mm-hmm.
so much as the presence of graveyard hate
Mm-hmm.
and the number of decks that benefit from having cards in their graveyard.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. The more I talk about this card, the closer I get to like F and D. Like
Yeah,
hard F, hard D.
I'm putting it at a C plus personally. I think that this card has capability, and in the right deck, I think it could really, really shine. But it certainly is situational. I do have to agree with you on
Yeah.
that.
All right. Well, let's move on to a card that's never situational. All right, I lied to you. It's Jessin Thief. It's 2 in a blue. Creature, human, rogue. Prowess. So, again, another prowess card on my side. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, and it's a 1/3. So, Kyle, I'm interested to hear what you think about this card before we go really deep into it.
So on this one, I think it's cool that it kind of fits into the same strategy that we were talking about, the possibility of like white blue with Seeker of the Way. And it's nice that we are seeing more prowess cards become available in Pauper. Uh, and I think that if we were going to be having this C play, I could see it maybe fitting into Is It Blitz to create some more card advantage for you. Uh, but I don't know. I think that there's better ways to do it. I think that
Yeah.
because you have to get this card into play and then swing with it, and then it has to deal damage, and then you get to draw your card. Or you could just
Mm-hmm.
play like Augur of Bolus, and you could just draw your card.
Yeah, for a
Um,
mana less.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Or you can play Ninja the Deep Hour and do it for 2 mana less sometimes.
exactly. So I think that this card, if it's going to see play, it's probably going to be in its own dedicated kind of strategy, along with something like Seeker of the Way. Um, Looking to use prowess as kind of the win con, but using both of those creatures to stay ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'm pretty low on this just because I see this as the worst of the two out of Jesse and Thief and Seeker of the Way, and the one less likely to see play.
Yeah. Yeah, this card's definitely not as good as Secret of the Way, because Secret of the Way can just go in decks, and it's like a hate card for burn decks, right? And aggressive decks,
Mhm.
just by the nature in which it plays. This card is a card advantage card, which you would want against control decks, but they're probably bringing in kill spells for this, or for your creatures. So unless you're another control deck, and you're like juking them, and you're like, we're gonna play this Curse of the Bloody Tome Mill battle, and you bring this thing in and get some card draw, it just
Mhm.
and they're not gonna have enough like kill spells to cut, so that's like probably not gonna happen. This card's not gonna see a lot of play. Where I think this is interesting is over time as we get more blue, red, and white prowess creatures, right?
Mhm.
It works very well in a prowess deck because they need to block it, right? So to not draw a card, and if they block another creature that's bigger, it draws more cards, which makes it easier to trigger prowess. So it's definitely like an engine card for prowess archetypes. So for that reason, I'm interested because later on down the road, right, it's much more appealing to me. Um, but I think it's like a D minus right now. It's like barely gonna see play, and it's
Yeah.
gonna take a lot of good prowess cards for me to want to play it. But there are cards that we're gonna talk about later that give protection. I'll call back to our thief here when that time comes.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I'm putting this thing at a D minus two as well because this is a.
Very situational.
I think it's a good point that you make that it is an engine card and that it's here. It's a good thing because it's something that we're going to have to work with in the future. but right now, I don't see it making an impact.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, do you know what I will think make an impact?
Not this.
Probably 3 cards from now.
Okay. So we have some time.
All right.
Well, in the meantime, we have this Riverwheel Aerialists. It is 5 and a blue. It is a Jin Monk, 4/5 flyer with prowess. Uh, so I don't like this specifically because it's so high in terms of cost, and then it's looking to take advantage of prowess. I mean,
Yeah, prowess cards
if
want
you're
to be
playing a
cheap.
prowess deck, hopefully you've really finished the game out by this point.
Yeah. So to go back to this theoretical prowess deck, that's really like this card's like an F. So like the theoretical prowess deck, your cards can't cost more than 3 mana unless they're like cheating into play like a Ninja the D power type effect that like draws you cards, or like Gush would be a card you play in the prowess deck because it's really 0 mana, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these kind of cards pull you too far a direction, and you want to have a low land count, so you're always triggering prowess, and your creature count has to be low, and you want your creatures to be small, like cheap in the mana cost, like we said, so you can get them down and you can cast multiple spells. So this guy just is like does everything wrong for the prowess deck.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's a good enough threat on his own. So
Yeah, I'm giving him an F. Like,
yeah,
just now.
yeah,
Not
well,
happening.
yeah. I hate to give him such a foul tongue, but foul foul tongue invocation is our next card. It's 2 in a black source. I'm sorry, instant. Target player sacrifices a creature. If you control a dragon or reveal a dragon from your hand, gain 4 life. So it's like a diabolic edict, but for an extra mana, if you got them dragons, you gain 4 life. This was a card that saw a pretty good amount of standard play. Cal, what do you think? Do you think we have enough dragons to make a dragon control deck viable?
So I really don't think we have enough dragons in this format. I know I've looked in the past. I don't remember the specifics of that search, but I specifically remember coming back and just being disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think like Scion of Ugin, that's why I kind of mentioned specifically that it's a dragon. Um, Maybe it might work, but I think that
There are 12, by the
it's
way.
asking for too much. It's asking for dragons to really be effective. You need to have a dragon either in your hand or on the battlefield for this card to be worth it. Otherwise, you might as well really just be playing Chainer's Edict.
Yeah, so I was going to say that it does give you like an instant speed sacrifice if you want more Diabolic Edicts over Chainer's
Yeah,
Edict, but the 2 for
yeah.
1 nature of Chainer's Edict I think outweighs it, even though the back half does cost a lot of mana. By the way, do you count Dragonfly as a dragon?
Dragonfly?
Yeah, like the creature type Dragonfly, because if not, there are 3 dragons before this set comes out in Pauper.
Yeah, I do not think that you count Dragonfly.
Okay, well,
Apparently that's why I was disappointed. I just completely wrote it off. Like, this isn't happening.
I mean, unless his app doesn't like count for downshifts in the future and only does the original printing, there's only 3 in Pauper, so that's not
Yeah.
good. Yeah, unfortunately, this card is not all it's cracked up to be. It wasn't a thrill to talk about that one, so I think it's like a D minus, possibly F.
I do just want to say, like, I think that that's kind of a strong strategic choice if Wizards is specifically attempting to not downshift anything in their format for specifically like a limited format for this.
Yeah,
That's going to be too crazy. Downshifting something that's specifically looking for dragons is kind of a very safe way to go in this case.
yeah, and it's also just hard to downshift dragons because you need to make dragons fancy and powerful because you want dragons to be cool because they're like the most marquee card in Magic. So it's hard. It's
And you
hard to
want
do.
you want people to be excited when they play a dragon and like
Yeah, you don't want them to be like whelp about that whelp dragon. So
okay then. So let's talk about something a little more thrilling.
ooh,
Thrill Kill Assassin. It's 1 in a black. It is a 1/2 with Death Touch and Unleash. And for those of you who were not around for Return to Ravnica, this Unleash is a mechanic when you have your creature enter the battlefield, you can have it enter with a +1/+1 counter on it. If you do, it can't block. So this card can be a 2/3, but then it can't block. So,
2/3
what do
death
you think
touch.
about this? 2/3 Death Touch can't block.
Yeah. So I think it's obviously meant for a suicide black deck, just in a really aggressive black creature deck. Um, the death touch is awkward because it basically it's kind of good and it's kind of awkward because you death touch you normally want on blockers, right? So that you trade and it makes de-incentivizes your opponent to block. So it's nice that card's kind of modal in the sense that if you're losing, then you can play that card and hold down the fort. Unfortunately, suicide black decks, as the name might suggest, are not super good at defending. And then when you unleash it, it basically means that double blocks are always 2-for-1 because the way death touch works is you assign one that's lethal, so it does 2 kills. So I think the card is good in a Suicide Black deck, but I don't know how many better cards there are for Suicide Black. Like there was one announced today that we're going to talk about next week for Ixalan. That's probably better than this. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's fine, but it's not great. What do you think? Unless I'm missing something.
Um, no, I think you basically hit the nail on the head that this could be an option for Suicide Black. Having something that wants to be aggressive, a 2/3 with Death Touch that can punch through walls is decent. And something that they aren't going to be really incentivized to want to block with if they're playing very few creatures. So it might have a place there in some kind of black aggro deck, but it's not exactly the most exciting. And seeing as that is the place that we're seeing it, uh, if you are to just not unleash it and let it sit back and block, you're kind of defeating the purpose of an aggro deck. So you really don't want to be using it in that regard.
Yeah, so I
So
guess it really
I'm,
comes down to do we want a 2/3 for 2 in the like Suicide Black deck?
which, I don't know. I don't think so. I
Yeah.
think that we probably have better options. I feel like the best thing about this card is that it can punch through a wall, in which case I would rather just have Doomblade.
Yeah, it is nice to have like that tempo play in those kind of Suicide Black decks. Or you might even just
So,
want the next card that we're going to talk about. So I think this is like a D, maybe a D plus.
yeah, I would probably put it at a D.
Yeah, that's probably right. I'm probably being too safe. All right, well, the next one, never too safe with this card. It's Virulent. How would you say that word?
Virulent.
Virulent Swipe. So it's black for an instant. Target creature gets +2/+0 and gains Death Touch until the end of turn rebound. So there's a cycle of these, and a lot of them got downshifters. So we're gonna talk about a bunch of them. This card kind of plays out like a Doomblade esque, right? But you have to trade your creature for it. But in exchange, it's sometimes a pump spell. So does Suicide Black want that instead of Doomblade? Is that something that you think you'd be interested in, Kyle?
No, I really maybe it could because it does have that surprise factor of, oh, I'm blocking one of your small creatures, and this is going to be safe because I have this massive creature.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that it is also one of those things because the rebound, it happens at your next upkeep, so they aren't going to be surprised by it a second time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and if too many decks pop up playing this as a combat trick, which is a pretty risky thing to do because your creature, it's not increasing their toughness at all, so you could just have your creature bolted. Um, yeah, I'm pretty low on this. I think that its best place might be in something like green black infect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Green Black Infect, and I think the cool thing about these, like, this cycle of 1 mana cards, and we're gonna talk about them later, is that they're really cool for the prowess deck that I was talking about earlier, because they are
Mm-hmm.
double spells and they're cheap, so it fits kind of what you're wanting to do. I think there's a chance it could see play in Suicide Black for what we just talked about, because it does give you that like removal spell aspect, but it also just +2/+0 when you're beating down. That's the difference between this and Doomblade. Like Doomblade is the better
Mm-hmm.
card because it clears the way always. This does let you sneak in damage, and then the next time it does, it basically says target creature must be blocked. Now it can be blocked by basically anything that can trade with it, but it does kind of force that if they're not willing to take the 3+ damage they're going to take. So I think it's like a
Yeah,
D, but
I could see this as like a one of include in Suicide Black deck, but the problem is that like Suicide Black isn't really showing up as a major archetype right now. It's
Because they didn't have, how do you say this card? Swipe. Black Swipe.
virulent swipe.
Yeah,
This is the card that's going to break it and make it for him.
yeah, that plus the thrill kill and the 2/3 we just got from Ixalan we're going to talk about next week, all about Suicide Black.
So I don't see this being the card that makes Suicide Black, but
Yeah, it's probably not.
but if you're really looking for some tech and you're an avid Suicide Black fan for one reason or another, please check this card out. Check out Virulent Swipe. Let us know how you like it.
Yeah. Do you want to be like Katy Perry and talk about this next one?
Is it the one that I'm thinking of? Are we doing this in the color order here?
Yeah, it's next on the list.
Okay.
It's like,
Okay.
Do you want to hear me? That's a song. Do you want to hear me?
No,
You're
I'm
not going to say it?
apparently
Draconic Roar. She has a song called
Oh.
Roar.
Actually, I was thinking of something different because it's popping up in the correct order for me apparently.
Oh, well, go ahead. I'll take Draconic Roar when the time comes.
Okay. White of Precinct 6 is our next card.
Oh, okay. That's at the bottom for me. That's weird.
Yeah. It's 1 and a black. That's because I'm using the Iconic Masters card gallery.
I'm using Reddit.
I'm fancy. I'm like bouncing between both. It's chaos, but
It is.
okay. So White of Precinct 6, 1 and a black. It is a 1/1 zombie. White of Precinct 6 gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your opponent's graveyard. So this is kind of a card that would go in the same strategy as Jace's Phantasm. This was what I believe that you mentioned.
Yeah, I was hinting to this card.
Mhm. This card, because a lot of decks can be very, very creature heavy. If you are milling them out, if you're milling out Stompy or like Red Deck Wins, this card could get pretty big pretty quickly. And that's concerning, especially when you look at this card and you see that it's a zombie. We do have a lot of zombies that are available in this format, and there really hasn't been anything that's super impressive done with zombies. I've kind of fiddled around with that archetype a little bit, but I could definitely see this making appearances in that kind of deck or in something with Jace's Phantasm as people attempt to make this work. The biggest issue being that if somebody is playing very, very few creatures in their deck, this really isn't going to be very effective at all.
Yeah. So I think this card has an interesting place potentially also in like a teachings deck. So instead of sometimes they play Gurmag Angler for a creature as like out of the sideboard as a threat to like juke the opposing control deck, this deck, this card isn't very good against opposing control decks, but it is good against is the creature decks if you just want a body, and then you're like play this on 2, they do something, then you hold up counter magic, then you like kill their thing, block something, eat it, and you can kind of take over. It just gives you an earlier play than Gurmag Angler. I don't think it's better, but I think that's an interesting application for it that I thought I should bring up. So, yeah, I'm not super... I'm more high on this card I am than Jace's Phantasm personally. I don't know how about you feel about it.
I really like this card. I think that it's pretty cool that if you are putting it in a deck with Jace's Phantasm, because I think that's kind of its best place. I can see it in a control shell, like you mentioned. Especially just because there are so many creature-oriented decks out there. I'm actually pretty high on this card. I think that it has some decent potential. I do agree that it has certain level of situationality to it, so I'm giving it a B-.
I'm going to taper mine with a C-. I'm a little more hesitant, but I am higher than I am on Jace.
I might be too optimistic about it, but who knows?
Yep.
So now would you like to make your Katy Perry reference?
I want you to read the card, though, because all my cards are pulled up over here. But I would like to make my Katy Perry Roar reference from earlier. Don't you want to hear me?
Roar. Draconic Roar.
There you go.
So you want me to read the card?
Yeah, you read it, because I have the rest of them pulled up on my phone, and we threw the order off.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You're fine.
Draconic Roar is 1 and a red. As an additional cost to cast Draconic Roar, you may reveal a dragon card from your hand. Draconic Roar deals 3 damage to target creature. If you revealed a dragon card or controlled a dragon card as you cast Draconic Roar. Draconic Roar deals 3 damage to that creature's controller. That is a lot of times to say Draconic Roar.
Dracari.
Draconic.
No, Dracari. It's a reference from Game of Thrones. That's what she says when she tells the dragons to light people on fire.
Oh, I.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
fine. You can be wrong again. You cannot watch good shows. So I think what's interesting with this card is in a dragon deck, it is basically Searing Blaze, right? Where yeah, that's it, Searing Blaze. So you just 3 them. And that's interesting, but it's more of just like a red control card. It's just a bolt. That's for creatures only. Is that something you're really interested in?
No, especially because there's not that many dragons. Like,
well, no, but would you play it just as deal like 2 mana, deal 3, and like a
no,
red base control deck? Yeah, I think Scred
no, because
plus
I'm gonna
bolt.
play like Lightning Strike before I play this.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of bad. D.
Yeah. I'm going even a lower F. Like, there's just not enough support for this at all.
Welp. That moves
They would
us
have
on
different
to the
so
card.
many things.
Well, this card's gonna make it all playable right here. Furnace Whelp. 2 red, red. Dragon. Hello. Flying. And then it has fire breathing, which is you can pay a red to give it +1/+0 till end of turn, and it's a 2/2. This is probably the best dragon that they have in Pauper.
And
it's
eh,
it's so
yeah.
bad. It's a 4-man. It's like an F. It's really bad. The only reason you give it a higher grade is it is the best dragon probably, which is like it's just like blowing my mind right now. But
yeah, it's not great. It's pretty bad. It's like being a good piece of finger painting. It's a pretty low bar.
Yep. All right.
Yeah, so we're well in that. We're just F.
Yeah, I think we marked that one with an F.
Okay, so next we have our glorious friend, Mark of Mutiny. Mark of Mutiny is 2 and a red. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on it and untap it. That creature gains haste until end of turn.
Why isn't this an excellent reprint?
What?
Why isn't
This is
it? No. Why isn't it? It's Mark of Mutiny. Hello, pirates.
Oh, that's a good point.
And they're
wow.
in Grixis. Wow. Wati
They really missed that.
Yeah. I don't know. Is there a lot of like aristocrat decks I'm just not seeing where you can like steal their thing, attack them, then sack it for value?
I've seen green black aristocrat decks lately going for splashing red for those kinds of effects.
Yeah.
Because it does help them get through. It helps them deal a little bit more damage, and they get to remove a creature. So, in the right situation, I'm saying in the perfect situation, this card could read something like deal 4 damage to your opponent, put a +1/+1 counter on one of your creatures, kill one of your opponent's creatures. Like, it can be good, but it's very, very limited. The decks that I've seen playing this, they're decent. Like, they're not bad decks necessarily. They're just certainly not like tier 1 decks.
Yeah.
So I can see this card, like, if you are playing an aristocrat deck that is utilizing these sorts of effects, this could be where you are going.
Yeah, it's. I think it's like a D-F category.
Yeah, I'm putting it at a D-, just because it does have some playability in aristocrats, and I think that if you're playing aristocrats right now, Jund is really the way to go. I think that splashing red for these kinds of effects is the way to go in that deck.
Yep. Well, we've crowned that card. Time for the crowned Ceratox. So it's a creature, rhino, trample. Each creature you control with... I'm sorry, it's 3 and a green. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample 4/3 for 4. So its body isn't the biggest thing ever. And it's kind of just there for +1/+1 synergies. Kyle, what do you think? I'm not feeling it. It dies to bolt as a 4-drop.
Well, the big thing about this creature that you are severely missing is
It's a
it's
rhino.
a rhino, and that is important. Um, I I could see this card seeing some kind of play. Um, plus one counters and like synergies on that, I think are a little underrated in Pauper.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a lot of potential with them. I mean, Hunger of the Howl Pack is a card that we have access to, and that's even in the same color as this. So I think it has potential. Um, its limiting factor is absolutely the fact that it just dies to bolt. That you can be spending 4 mana and your opponent is going to respond with a 1 mana solution to the problem that you presented. That doesn't put you in a good position.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. I'm giving it a D minus. It has some synergies, and so like if a +1/+1 counter deck does pop up, it'll probably see. I don't know. It's an F. Whatever. It's bad. Like it's not.
I'll give it a D minus just because I think that there's some room for experimentation. If you wanted to toy around with like plus one counters, I would expect this card to pop up somewhere in your deck. But the likelihood of really seeing a deck that's specifically utilizing plus one counters, like that's using the graft mechanic or something, it's not a very likely thing.
Yeah, it's not very high up on my list of things that are gonna happen.
Yeah, it's not something that I feel like doing, you know?
Yeah, it's not. It's
Um,
not like Harvard. It's not an Ivy League strategy.
okay. So next we have our next card, Duskdale Worm. It is 5 and 2 green for a 7/7 trample. Um, how do you feel about this?
It's 7 mana for a 7/7 trampler. Huh. I feel like I'm getting closer to Halt and Catch Fire every second. I don't know. It doesn't seem very good to me. Like you could be playing Ulamog Crusher for one more. You could be playing Scion of Ugin for one less. Like it's big. Like it's big. But I don't Tron decks play that one guy that gained you life, the weird looking big green hulky guy. So like I don't know. I don't think it's very good. What do you think?
I think in green ramp decks it might find some sort of place, but like I think it's called Oriok Herd is just a better outlet for all of the mana that you are creating than this is.
Mm-hmm.
So, and especially because that gains trample when it attacks with other Orioks, if I remember correctly. So this card is pretty bad. It's
Mm-hmm.
I think there are just better options within the archetype that it could possibly fit into.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm giving it
You're giving it
uh,
a.
there's better things that you could be playing.
Yeah, you disconnected there for a second, so you gave it an F.
Yes, F.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know what got an F at its school and then dropped out?
Me?
No, Ivy Elemental,
Oh.
6 self dagger though. X green creature elemental. Ivy Elemental comes into play with X +1/+1 counters on it. It's a 0, 0. So it's only as big as you put mana into it -1. It's not really good. Like the reason this card was a rare before wasn't because it's good. It's a rare because of complexity, which happens a lot, and you see people complain like, "Why is this card a rare or a mythic? It's not even that good." This was just complex back in the day, and I don't think this card's close to playable. I don't know about you, but with you disconnecting like
Yeah,
that, yeah. Hello,
What? Can you hear me?
You disconnected for a second. Yeah, repeat.
Okay. What I was going to say is I actually kind of dig this card.
Whoa.
Um,
Continue. Sorry.
okay. I thought the reason that I like this card is specifically in Tron decks. There was a Tron deck that I brewed recently that is specifically green-red Tron, and it really excelled at finding Tron pieces specifically. And you could easily like I've killed opponents with that deck by casting Rolling Thunder for 20. Like it's a thing.
So I choose
So
cast Rolling Thunder over this. Like, why play
I think
this?
having a body is a greater possibility. It's better specifically in this case because you, how do I want to put this?
I mean, like Rolling Thunder
If
has
you
to be like
don't,
20 to be
if you are
lethal, right?
not up to Rolling Thunder for lethal, like chances are you want to be using that to kill your opponent's creatures then.
Yeah.
Um, but IV Elemental, it's a great outlet, and a lot of the time in that deck, you are sitting around with tons and tons of mana and not necessarily a lot to do.
What about Ulamog's Crusher though? It's just like an 8/8, and it just annihilates.
Ulamog's Crusher it is in the deck, it's decent, but I think that this is something that I would like to have in addition.
In addition, okay. Yeah, I guess Rolling Thunder like
Maybe as
5
like
and
a one
6.
of or a two of, just as like a mana dump if I have nothing else going on and I want to have a big creature. Um, this is a decent enough option that gives you a certain amount of inevitability.
Yeah, it's fine. Excuse me.
It's
I literally yawned. That's how excited I am for that card. Oh man.
okay.
Woo.
Well, I'm putting it at probably like a C minus.
F.
Even though I like it, I think that it's extremely situational that you would ever want this card.
Yeah, I'm on the old hard F. I mean, I
Fair
could be
enough.
wrong, but like history has shown me that these cards aren't that good, and I in the Doomblade, Chainer's Edict, Diabolic Edict, Foul Tongue, Dragon Invocation one. I don't think it's gonna happen, but
Yeah, I would agree. Like the amount of unconditional removal that can take it out is just
counter
obscene.
spell. You tap out, you get dazed. Feels bad. You know what doesn't feel bad? Casting our
What?
next card.
And which one's that?
Jotty Offshoot.
Okay, so we are going to go with this.
Yeah, well, then the next card should be the one that's out of order for me. But
Am I up on Jaddy Offshoot?
yeah,
Or...
you're up on
yes.
Jotty Offshoot.
Okay. So Jaddy Offshoot is a green mana. It's a 0/3 defender, and landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life.
Boom.
So I think it's actually not terrible.
Yeah, I think it's great as a sideboard card for like stopping aggressive decks and burn decks.
I also think that if you're playing something like Gaunt's Combo, um, having this over like one of the Soul Sisters might be an option, because it doesn't die to Electrickery, which I think is a big weakness in that deck. Mm-hmm. And even though it's lands, sorry, gosh, I'm like going off on a tangent that makes 0 sense then. No, never mind.
Okay, I wasn't 100% sure what that deck did, but I was like, I don't know. He knows more than me about this one. Yeah, I do think, though, if you have a slower ramp deck, and control decks and ramp decks are very similar, so like a ramp or a control deck that has green in it, this is a good card to stop like burn, and it even stems the tide against like green stomping. Like if they're not suiting up their dudes or getting to the bigger ones, like it can pretty reasonably like chump for a while, or I'm sorry, we'll just like butt heads, and then gain your life. And like if you get 2 of these out early, that's insane. If you just get 1 and like you play like on turn 1, the difference is huge. We're talking like probably 6 to 7 life on the low end swing. Not just from lands, but from blocking as well.
Yeah, I especially could see this actually seeing play now that I think of it in the Sultai land destruction decks that you see running around every now and then. They often have a hard time staying alive long enough to make an impact. And with all of the bounce lands that they tend to play, this could certainly make a bit of an impact there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. This format plays bounce lands too, so it's even better. You like bounce your Radiant Fountain, you play it, you gain 3 life. Boom! Yeah. Suck it, sucka.
And especially if you're playing against burn at that point, then like, okay, I just got rid of your lightning bolt. So,
all right. Yeah.
I'm gonna say that I'm probably at a C- on this, just because I don't think there are a lot of decks that are looking for this, but the decks that could take advantage of this could make a pretty big difference for.
Yeah, I think this is like a B- card, but solely on that, like it's going to be good as more dedicated like land ramp strategies get better, and the card in general is just such a good sideboard card, and it's so good at what it does. Like it is like kind of an ace in the right decks against the decks you want it for, and as such, I'm gonna give it the B minus. Even though normally those
Okay.
kind of cards would get an A, like a relic is like an A type of hate card. This card does require a little bit more
Hmm.
work, and it's worse later on. But when you get it in those earliest turns, it is just insane. And I've always been impressed with Johnny Offshoot in Standard 2 when it was in the sideboard of ramp decks there. So I'm going to give it a B
Yeah.
minus.
You convinced me. I'll give it a B minus as well. This is actually, especially as a sideboard card, I think that you're definitely right that this has some potential.
Yep. Well, I'm going to lead the charge in this next one because it's insane. Lead the Stampede. It's 2 and a green, sorcery. Reveal the top 5 cards of your deck. Add all creatures to your hand, put the rest of the bottom of your deck. Card's great. It is like divination, almost always at like the worst case scenario is you hit nothing right, but more reasonably you hit like 1 or 2 in your worst case. It's very unlikely because like if you hit nothing, you probably hit like all lands, and if you said 3 mana, make sure I don't draw the next 5 lands, you'd be very happy sometimes. So even then, like it might not be what you're looking for, but it works you towards something that you're then like, so like if you hit 5 lands, for example, you're probably getting really close to hitting your creature. So while you didn't get it off the lead, you're now working your way towards it. And when you play it like in a deck like Elves or Green Stompy, it just refuels your hand. I mean, like when you play this card in Elves, we're talking draw 4, draw 5 sometimes. That deck plays so few lands. This card is insane. Insane in
Yeah.
the membrane.
I think that this is great because like just what you said, if you are hitting lands, it's getting all those lands out of your way, and that's probably not what you were looking for at the moment. Um, and beyond that, I think that if you're hitting 5 lands, you might, or 5 spells that like you aren't able to grab with this, you might not be playing this in the right deck.
Yeah, where you got so unlucky. You hit like your other 3 lead the
Mhm.
Stampedes and like your 2 Rancors or something weird like that. Like your weird cards.
Exactly. And elves, somebody on Reddit mentioned the math behind this. That you have a 60% chance of getting 4 or more creatures in an elves deck with this, and you have a 90% chance of getting at least 3.
Yeah, so it
So that's pretty good because the elves decks typically only run 12 lands. So that is just incredible. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, you're getting elves and you're getting tons of creatures off of this. I think any creature deck that's
It's like base creatures only.
that is mostly creatures at least, and I'd actually be interested to see like how many creatures you really need to be running for this card to be effective.
I imagine
Uh,
28. That's
yeah, a
like
lot of people were
that's
comparing.
the Coco math. So yeah, in case you don't know, in collected company decks, 28 is like as low as you can get and still reasonably hit. So
Yes, I was just going to say a lot of people had actually been comparing this to the collected company of Pauper
mhm.
in a sense. So, and even in decks that aren't necessarily just dedicated creature decks, if you have enough creatures in your deck, if you run this in the sideboard, this could be an option against control decks to kind of refuel yourself if need be.
Yeah, sure. So
So,
maybe you have like an all-in combo elf deck and you don't want this, but you play against the blue-black deck, you want something. This is like this card. This card's an A plus in my book. Like this is probably the best card in the set for Popper, hands down. Come at me, Reddit. What do you think?
absolutely, I agree. A plus. This is the best card in this set. It's the best downshift that we've gotten out of this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's just amazing. I think that if anything is going to have the likelihood of changing how either changing the format as a whole or at least changing how people have to think while they're building decks, this is going to be that card.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we've talked enough about that card. Let's move on.
Okay. So our next card is another one in the rebound cycle. It is Praise Vengeance. It is a single green instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and it has rebound. So I'm going to say, because I've worked a lot recently on building infect decks and trying to make it work, um, I really like this card from the theoretical standpoint of it's basically Groundswell. Um, Problem is, it's Groundswell over 2 turns. And when you are playing Infect, you do not want to be having to get through on 2 separate turns. It's incredibly difficult to do that, especially on turns in a row, unless you're playing like Distortion Strike along with this. If you're playing Distortion Strike along with this, then you're fine. But the likelihood of those two lining up is not great. Um,
Yeah.
and also having to keep your creature alive for 2 turns rather than just one is problematic, to say the least. So I don't really like this card. I don't see it really replacing anything in the Infect decks. And I don't see it really going much of anywhere else.
Yeah, if it was like red, white, or blue, it would be like great for the prowess deck I keep talking about. But green has no prowess creatures. It's not even in the color pie for them, so they're never gonna get them. And it's just like a bad pump spell. Like you can just play Rancor.
Yeah,
Rancor's
I
just
would
better.
rather be playing Rancor, absolutely, because Rancor, you're getting it for as many turns as you need it.
So we actually skipped a card in this cycle earlier. That I just realized we skipped, and it's in white. So we should probably talk about it now because we're about to move on to colorless. So
Oh,
it's
yes.
emerged unscathed. So this is actually the first in the rebound cycle that we missed. So it's white. Target creature you control gains protection from color of your choice until end of turn, instant with rebound. So this is a card for like the theoretical white blue like tempo prowessy deck where you can just like name your thief and give it like you're playing against a green deck, you're like pro green, attack, draw a card, you like get 2 damage in. So I do think this card isn't very good right now, but long term, if we get more of those type of cards, it's a card you're gonna come back to. I just wanted to like quickly bring it up because we did miss it.
Yes, we did miss that.
Yep.
Thank you for bringing it up. I also think that this is a card that could end up in, what would you call it? Uh, Tribe Combo. Gosh, the name escaped me for a minute. Um, Tribe Combo or Inside Out Combo, as some people call it. It's This is a pretty good card for it because you are getting the protection potentially that you need, and sometimes you're looking for something like Shadow Rift or I think that's what it's called. This card kind of gives you that option of evasion,
Mm.
and it can be both protect my spell and next turn I have evasion, so I go off with Inside Out. I don't have to worry.
Mm.
So I could see it making an appearance there as well.
Yeah, I think it's like a C minus.
I'm actually going to give it just a solid C. I
Okay.
think that, especially as a sideboard option, I think this thing shows some potential.
Okay, cool. Well, let's move on to the next one then when it comes to artifacts. I imagine you're scrolling, so I'll take care of it real quick. It's Dark Steel Axe. It is
Mhm.
1 colorless for an artifact equipment. It has indestructible, and it has equipped creature has +2/+0, and then equip 2. So the artifact is indestructible, the creature is not. I kind of like this card. This is a card I'm very interested in. I want to know what your thoughts on it are.
Um, I don't like it specifically because Bone Splitter is a thing in this format.
Yeah.
Uh, while the indestructible, like, it certainly helps, I don't necessarily think that it's like warranted to pay the extra 2 to equip it to a creature.
You mean the
I
extra
would
one?
Yeah, the extra one. Thank you.
Okay, you're fine.
I would really rather just be playing Bone Splitter. Maybe seeing this as a one of in a deck that's playing something like Trinket Mage to tutor for this stuff.
Oh no, you see, I want it with my bone splinters. Like sometimes, like the white aggro
Okay,
decks, like you just want more bone splinters.
okay,
So
okay.
like, I thought like it's not like very high. It's like a C minus, but it's like if you've ever wanted more bone splinters, this is like a pretty good bone splinter.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, maybe then. If you're looking for more bone splitters, um, then this might be an option for that.
Because I mean that deck has a bunch of squadron hawks, so it gets in pretty easily. You know.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so um, I'll probably give it like a D plus.
I,
Like,
I think actually next
I don't
week.
like it, but
No, sorry, continue.
I don't really like the card, but I do agree with you that if you are looking for bone splitters, this is going to give you that option. Plus, it's an axe. Like, that's cool. Like, you got another axe too. Like, it fits the flavor, I guess.
Yeah, I think that once we talk about a card next week, I'm gonna make a strong argument for that deck, and I think once we talk about that card, you're gonna want to come back and play Darksteel Axe in your deck. Like
Okay. Okay.
I think that new card plus this will incentivize you to want to play more equipment. And unless there's one I've missed, I think this will be like the go-to one.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah. I would. I'm looking forward to that argument.
all right. Well, let's move on to the next one.
Okay. Guardian Idol. It is 2 mana. Guardian Idol enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it to add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool, or generic, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Nowadays.
It is. Yeah. There's a difference. It is generic mana.
Yes.
Yeah.
And 2, Guardian Idol becomes a 2/2 golem artifact creature until end of turn.
Eh.
Meh.
Yeah. Like
I'm not.
if you want a mana rock, but you also need like a body sometimes, this card's fine. But it's not exciting.
Yeah, it's not really high on my list either. So I'm giving it just a D. Like I'm tempted to just I don't know. I'm tempted to just give it a solid F because I don't really like the card. It mana rock, potentially creature, can block a 1/1, but if you're blocking something that has
Well, one thing it
2
does do,
power.
it lets you be a mana rock early, be a blocker late game to keep you alive while you're trying to draw to your big threats, and it does pressure
Yeah.
control decks. So I'm gonna give it a D minus because even with all those, it still barely gets out of the unplayable
Yeah.
category for me. I mean, it's like really, really bad, and you have to really, really want it. But I think it does all those things good enough that it wouldn't be the worst card I've ever seen. It's not like putting Furnace Whelp in your deck.
Yeah. If you're looking for something to do this job, then this is a card that can do this job fairly well. So yeah, I'm giving it a D minus as well.
So I think there's definitely a reason this is the last card. They did this on purpose. They are setting up Ixalan. It's Star Compass. So it's an artifact for 2 generic mana. It comes into play tap. Tap, add to your mana pool 1 mana of any color a basic land you control could produce. So it's ramp an artifact, but it doesn't fix you. It just ramps you. Go, Kyle.
Ooh, so you have to answer me this question because I think it works. This will work. Unknown Shores plus this.
Unknown Shores is not a basic land.
Oh, it's basic. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yes. But I think if
Oof,
you were to play a Gift of Paradise type card, right, then it would work. Because it says any land your basic land could produce. And since my basic land can produce any color, right, we're going deep, really deep right now. I need air. Oh, God, I'm hemorrhaging.
So, Abundant Growth.
Yeah.
Nilia's Growth, things like that. Nilia's Abundance, I mean. Wait, that's the card.
Sure.
So, it has some applications. And it's a possibility for allowing you to fix your mana a little bit further if artifacts is proving to be an easier way for you to do that than something like enchantments or using that in conjunction with enchantments. If you're playing like a really, really color greedy deck,
yeah,
and you're looking for the possibility to produce like double blue, double red, double green, whatever, then maybe.
Yeah.
I think that it's a ton of work, and to keep yourself alive long enough to actually make all of that happen could be a pretty difficult thing, and it's asking a lot. So, I don't know. I'm pretty low on this card. It's a possibility, but it's not. It's certainly not the strongest card in the set.
Yeah, it's not great. Like you could use it to like get double colored spells and triple colored spells easier, right? But then like isn't rampant growth in the format too? So you want to do it in like a non-green deck. So then it's like Tinker is the next card I'm thinking of, but it's like I can't think of anything, so it's probably just an F. I don't know.
I think I'd rather just be playing.
Yeah, Prophetic Prism is very good and does a similar thing.
Draw
but
a card.
Yeah,
it ramps a little bit, but
Oh no, Prophetic
It's
Prism doesn't
negligible.
ramp. It just fixes because you
Oh
have to
no,
pay
I'm
him.
talking about Star Compass. I
Oh, okay.
apologize.
Yeah,
To be
yeah.
more specific,
My bad.
explicit with my language.
I guess I'll give it a D minus because it is ramp that breaks the color pie because it gives ramp to colors that don't normally have ramp, and as
Okay.
such, that's an interesting effect. So I'm gonna go D minus to be safe. I'm being generous. I've given a lot of Fs this show, not a single B. Or I gave one B. But
Yeah, we've been pretty well on this. Hopefully, Exelon will be better.
wrong.
I'll give it a D just because there's some potential with it. It does, like you said, break the color pie, and I could see it being in some like weird combo decks of sorts that are like looking to ramp
Hmm.
and don't want just like to produce generic mana. They want to specifically be producing colored mana.
Yeah. All right. Well, that wraps up this iconic episode of Common Knowledge. Kyle,
Well,
what did you think about all these
we
cards?
so first before we talk about our general opinions of this,
Hmm?
uh, I would like to take a moment to thank all of our fantastic listeners. And if you feel that our work here is worthy of your support in a monetary form, we do have a Patreon that is Common Knowledge on patreon.com. Um, check us out, donate it there. Sometime in the future, once we have enough patrons, we are going to look at setting tiers and giving extra access in episodes, things like that. Um, also, we do have two other podcasts on our network. We have Constructed Criticism, which is kind of the flagship podcast of the Constructed Criticism Network. See, same name, not a coincidence. And that is about improving as a Magic player in general, as well as looking at specific constructed formats. And then there is Limited Time Only, which is a podcast that looks specifically at improving in limited formats like draft and sealed.
Mm-hmm.
So please take a chance to check both of those out and visit our iTunes page, visit Common Knowledge as well as Constructive Criticism and Limited Time Only. And if you could leave a little bit of a review, that would be super appreciated. It helps us out and it helps get the word out to more people. So
Yep.
that is it. Okay. And now we get to kind of answer the question with all of these downshifts, how do we see this changing the format? Do
Lead the Stampede will make elves better, right? Seeker of the Way will
Yeah.
be like a mediocre sideboard card. And there's not a whole lot going on. There's like potential for some stuff, but it's not a whole lot. Like we're going through. Oh, I'm sorry. Darksail Axe will break the format, but we don't know about excellent cards yet. So we're about the set's about to be great, but for right now it's pretty mediocre. So
Okay. I see this as like a big just stew of potential options, and I feel like we've used that kind of phrasing a lot throughout this, that we've been saying that, oh, this could potentially fit in this could potentially fit in that,
mm-hmm.
this could potentially allow this to become a thing. And that's basically what this whole series of downshiftings, and maybe with Ixalan, some of that will be solidified as kind of like a two-part set here. And Ixalan's actually going to come out before this, if I
Yeah, so this set's actually not coming out until the fall, like later in
I
the
think it's
fall, like November.
yeah. So
Yeah,
we have some time before this really hits our shores.
does it affect
Ixalan will be
Magic
coming
Online
ashore first.
sooner? Are they gonna like
Uh,
affect the changes just cause? Or are they gonna wait?
I am not sure.
I'll
I am
tweet
not
at
sure
Mark
on that.
Rosewater. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Um, see what happens. Yeah, I think that this is just a lot of potential. I think Lead the Stampede, Seeker of the Way, potentially like Jace's Phantasm and Light of Precinct 6 having an impact. I could see those cards all showing up once this set becomes legal. I think you're probably going to end up seeing almost everything that's on here in some capacity. Somebody's going to be trying it at some point. But those are kind of fringe cases. I think the big one is really, really Lead the Stampede because that's going to improve the plausibility of creature decks, and it's going to improve their resiliency against really removal heavy strategies. Like, I could see this making red black control a lot worse.
I completely agree. Darksteel Axe makes your deck so much better against the control decks. They can't answer; it's indestructible, and it makes all your creatures into must answers. I couldn't agree more, Kyle. I'm glad we're on the same page.
I'm glad I came around. This feels great.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. Lead the
And
Stampede. Lead the Stampede's busted. It's a great card. Like, it's a card I'm probably gonna be playing in Modern because the cards that come out in Ixalan. Like, it's insane. So, card's great.
and I think that the big thing is with these downshifts, it's pretty obvious that Wizards is being a little more conservative this time around.
Mm-hmm.
After the last time that we had downshifts, I mean, you mentioned it to me before the episode, Mason, that we had bannings and things like that. And
They broke it.
that can be an issue. These master sets can really break a format. So being a little more conservative is going to keep things like Peregrine Drake from happening and ruining the format for lots of people for a very long time, which is a good thing. But we also don't see necessarily the power level that we want or the format warping effects that we necessarily might like to see.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads me to the question. And I think that we probably are
On the same page.
beating a dead horse with
Darksteel Axe.
Favorite downshift.
It's Darksteel Axe. Like, here's the thing. Lead the Stampede's like the correct answer. But after next week, you're going to be so high on Darksteel Axe, you're going to be getting your 4 foil foreign copies from Haruria or something like that. Like, you're going to be all about it. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, got to get there. Like, you're going to be typing away. Like, trust me, dude. It's a can't miss episode.
Okay. I'm really interested. Like, you have me hyped about Darksteel Axe. Like, I'm really excited.
That's because the card's so good that your heart knows it's good. Your mind's just telling you it's not right.
But in all honesty, like, the thing that I am most hyped about is actually Jace's Phantasm. Like, I know you are not high on this card at all, but I am super excited about this card because I feel like it can be just abused like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah, you put a Darksteel Axe on it, bam, 7/5.
Oof.
Wow. You turn it into a Delver. Darksteel Axe turns into a Delver while you're setting up the Milcon. It's like 3 7 Boom, perfect math. 3 7 game.
Boom.
It's easy to
We broke the format, people. I mean, this it's all over. Like, what more do we have to talk about?
Some would say that's common knowledge. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's common knowledge. We broke the format with Darksteel Axe.
You make it sound like that card's not going to break the format. It's like you don't believe.
I don't necessarily believe because I don't know what card you're talking about. I feel like I should, but I trust you, and I do believe that there is going to be something that's going to make that card very, very good.
Oh, geez, I might have talked too much. All right, well, let's
you might have.
Yeah, no, not possible. All right.
All right. So, any closing thoughts that aren't Darksteel Axe related?
I was gonna say you can pick up Darksteel Axe foil on legit MTG here for a very good price. What I'm seeing, so I'm picking up my copies right now for my Pauper League.
Are they Russian?
Das Japanese. Konnichiwa. That's what you say. You say that, and then you get them sign the match slip, and then you move on. You move on with the day. So, closing thoughts. I really like some of these cards. I don't know if you could tell, but like I really like the idea of a prowess S deck that's like the Kiln Fiend blue-red deck, but like not as uninteractive, and it's like more cool, and it's probably never going to be a great deck, but those are the cards that really like get me excited, and I'm excited to talk about the broken Darksteel Axe next week.
Nice. Yeah, I'm definitely more of the techie individual where like I get excited about card advantage provided by Lead the Stampede.
By Darksteel Axe, right? Turns all your creatures into better creatures.
Darksteel Axe, because it's drawing cards now.
Yeah.
He made it angry. That's when it draws
Well,
cards.
you put it on the
So
thief, and then it's a 3/2. So they have to block with something big, but then you pump your other guy, and prowess makes it a 4/3, a 4/4, and it kills their creature. You didn't draw a card, but you killed a card, which is like drawing a card, because you're going to draw a land anyways, because it's never lucky. And then you draw another Darksteel Axe, and now both your thieves are big.
this is
And now
getting
and that
ridiculous.
triggers
Please,
prowess,
please.
and because it triggered prowess, your Secret of the Way has lifelink, and now it's a 5/4. Suck it, burn, gain 5, and then you win. Game over. Like drop.
Okay. Okay. So let's move on to our shout outs for the week. This week I really don't have anyone that I need to say a shout out to, so I'm going to just shout out to my brother Michael Novus. He probably doesn't listen to this podcast, but him and I have been playing a ton of Destiny 2 lately. Feel free to forward your hate mail to Mason Clark. And it has been awesome. It's super fun. Joined a clan, so I guess shout out to Destiny 2 community as well. There we go.
All right. Well, Destiny
Any
looks
shouts,
sweet.
please?
I'm waiting for it to come out on PC.
Fair enough.
I'm gonna shout out the Magnus Netflix documentary. So it's a documentary about Magnus Carlsen, who is the world's best chess player, and it's funny because he actually has an active problem with dealing with tilt, which is something that a lot of Magic players have. And he's just like the world's best chess player, yet he still tilts and gets upset at himself. And I think it is a must watch if you're a Magic player who suffers with that, where you're interested in those things. So I would suggest going watching that and a shout out to that movie. It's on Netflix. I believe it's just called Magnus. So,
Huh, I'll definitely have to check that out. That sounds really cool, actually.
yep. Well, that's all for me.
All right. All right, Mason. So let's say that I want to talk to you about, dare I say it, Darksteel Axe. Where can I find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at SOVMason. I'm going to be constantly tweeting at Darksteel Axe links to TCG Player. Buy them up. You can also find me on the Constructed Criticism Family Common Knowledge Facebook groups with the name Mason Clark. I'm probably the only one in there. Happy to add you and talk about all our sweet different Darksteel Axe altars that we have.
Okay.
What about you, Kyle? What if someone wanted to message you and talk about how sweet their Titan is on Destiny?
It's funny because I actually play a Titan. Titans are awesome.
1 in 3 got there. Just like Darksteel Axe. Woo!
All right, so if you want to talk to me at all about Destiny or Pauper, please feel free to find me on Twitter at Kyle_Novus. You can also find me in the Constructed Criticism family. Kyle Novus, I'm probably the only one there. I think there's a few of us on the East Coast, but most people are not in that group. So you can also find me on Twitch. I have not been streaming much lately with the start of classes, but I am Cursed Lono. Yes, Lono, the Hawaiian warrior god.
Why are you streaming Destiny?
I just haven't had the time. So if you have any questions about the podcasts, any questions, comments, shenanigans, tomfoolery, and whatnot, please feel free to message me at any of those locations. I would love to talk to you and help you out in any way that I could. And that is everything for us here at the Common Knowledge family this week. From our home to yours, we hope that you have a good day and a good night.
Hasta luego.